Hello, everyone. This is Kripa Anand, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Today, we are looking at the mechanics of global scale. In 2026, building a successful tech company isn't just about the product, it's about creating a unified revenue engine that can pivot with the speed of AI. Joining us today is Peter Dougherty, Chief Revenue Officer at Workleap. Peter is a heavy hitter in the SaaS world with over 15 years of experience scaling businesses like Lightspeed Commerce from startup to IPO. Now, at the helm of Workleap's global growth, he is overseeing the expansion of an ecosystem that supports over 20,000 companies worldwide. So, before further ado, let's welcome the special guest. Peter, welcome to the podcast. Such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Kripa. It's great to be here.
Now, Peter, you've led go to market transformations at major players like Spreedly and Lightspeed, and now you're leading Workleap's next phase of growth. So, firstly, a huge congratulations for everything that you've achieved.
Thank you.
Uh, let's start by understanding from your experience how to build a unified GTM strategy across sales, marketing, and customer success. What's your secret sauce?
Yeah. Ultimately, I think about building revenue factories. How do you
Mm-hmm.
create this repeatable model or this machine that
Uh-huh.
creates, new logo growth, retention, and what are the inputs and outputs along the factory floor to make that
Mm-hmm.
happen? That's the way my brain works.
Wow, I think getting those three functions to speak the same language is the only way to, maintain the momentum as you move past the startup phase. So, is it? Do you spend specific time training your mind to do that, or is it something that now is embedded in your lifestyle and workflow?
A friend of mine told me that term, building a revenue factory many years ago, and
Uh
it's
huh.
it's stuck in my brain ever since. And I can say now I definitely think that way by default, but it's
Uh
it's
huh.
been a journey to learn of what matters, what doesn't. But
Yeah.
it's not just about, okay, this deal or that deal. That matters too. But ultimately, the role of the CRO is to build the factory, the machine,
Yeah.
and then they have leaders or sometimes AI who think about all the steps along the way and how to optimize each step. Your role is to make sure you have all the steps working in harmony.
Yeah, makes sense. Now that you've mentioned AI, of course, any conversation without AI today is incomplete, right?
Yeah.
So let's now explore how AI is transforming HR and supporting modern people managers. So, from your perspective, how is AI transforming HR? And also, how is Workleap adapting its GTM strategy with AI's role?
Yeah, great question. And so HR is a world that is a balance of innovation. How do we push our team members to adopt new technology?
Hmm.
But also very much conservatism. They deal with sensitive information. You have your
Yeah.
employees' SIN numbers and payroll data, etc. And so there's
Hmm.
always that balance of how do I push my organization to innovate while still being cautious with some of the sensitive data and information that I use. And so HR as a space is really interesting for us like that.
Hmm.
And ultimately, what you just want to do is you want to show the HR buyer the
Yeah.
future. You want to show what's possible, paint the picture of the art of the possible, but at the same time reassure them that you're thinking about these compliance matters and these things that maybe don't necessarily always need AI. And so
Right.
it's changing the way that we work, both internally, but it's also changing the products that we sell and the stories that we're telling to the market.
No, definitely, that makes sense. I think empowering people specifically who are at that leadership role, right? If you're giving the right tools to them, I think the entire game is getting sorted. And also, when we talk about AI with HR is always, a people heavy component in the
Hmm.
conversation, right? So, what do you think? Let's do a little time travel here. If I were to give you a time machine and say we were to travel 5 or 10 years into the future, then you get out of that time machine. How exactly do you envision the HR world changing with or without AI?
I think the role of HR, at least in when it comes to AI in 5, 10 years, whatever the timeline is going to be actually to manage the AI, manage the agent, just like it manages employees. If
Hmm.
HR's role is to define what great looks like in an organization, what culture looks like, et cetera, in an organization,
Yeah.
their role will be to do the same for how an agent interacts with the world.
Yeah.
What tone of voice does it use? Is it a little bit gentler, a little bit tougher? So just like they help build the culture of the team, the people team,
Hmm.
they build the culture of the AI team as well. And that'll be an interesting transformation for HR leaders to think about how do I manage both equally,
Yeah.
but obviously they're still very different.
No, definitely. You've painted quite a picture there. The future definitely looks very promising. Now, let's talk about how Workleap is scaling its solution across global markets.
Mm.
So, when it comes to discipline, how do you maintain disciplined revenue operations during global expansion?
Growing around the world can be very exciting,
Yeah,
but it can also create lots of traps to fall into. Doesn't mean growing around the world isn't great. And so you need to be very deliberate around deciding when you've used up all of the raw material or all of the TAM, total addressable market, in the
yeah,
markets you serve today. And in ShareGate's sense, in Workleap, ShareGate's our IT-based product, we have a strong brand presence in North America in the mid-market.
hmm,
Are we winning in the enterprise? I think we have lots of opportunity there. Are we winning all over Europe? I think we have lots of opportunity there. Same for APAC. And so we need to decide, is it easier, better, lowest cost decision to grow in the geographic markets we have, but maybe
hmm,
by doing it into larger or smaller customers versus going across the Atlantic or across the Pacific. And that's where you really need to decide what's going to cost the least for the highest return, what's the easiest to do. Because also, even just simple things like all of a sudden, if you have teams in Europe or in
yeah,
Asia, all of a sudden as an executive team you're doing meetings 24/7 to manage everyone's time zone. So there's
yeah.
trade-offs, there's pros and cons for all of it, and you need to really decide what are the pros, what do I get for it, and what's the lowest cost at each step. And also just
Definitely.
being
Yeah.
honest with yourselves of how much opportunity is left in the markets you already serve, and often there's more than you think.
Wow, I think that's a great perspective and a great eye opener. Building on what you just said, Peter, here's a special message for all of our listeners, specifically to the SaaS founders and leaders watching. In 2026, the biggest mistake you can make is scaling chaos. If your
Mm.
sales and marketing teams are running on different data, your global expansion will stall before it starts. Peter's journey from Lightspeed to Workleap proves that simplicity is the ultimate value. Whether you're using the Workleap platform to drive performance or ShareGate for ID governance, your operations must be built on a foundation of unified data. Don't just chase the next market, build the revenue engine that can sustain it. The simplest products win because they are the easiest to scale. Coming back to you, Peter, having a clear purpose and a builder mindset ensures that your global expansion remains sustainable and focused on customer value. So thank you so much for those insights. Now let's look at how simplicity continues to define effective ID governance. I mentioned in the message as well, so I'd love for you to expand on that. How do you keep ShareGate simple as IT environments grow more complex? And please go ahead and explain this from a layman's perspective.
Yeah, so ShareGate solves the problem for an IT administrator of this sprawl that happens in a Microsoft environment. And today, every CIO, every VP of IT, etc., is trying to answer the question from their board, how do
Yeah.
I implement Copilot? How do I bring enterprise AI into our business? And the fear that everyone has is some junior in the organization punches in, what's the CEO's salary into the enterprise AI, and gets the answer. And
Hmm.
so that is the fundamental problem that everyone in the IT space is trying to solve for the last 12 months and likely for the next many couple of years. And what ShareGate really focuses on is helping the IT manager, the VP of IT, solve that governance question around implementing AI. And how you do that is a longer answer. You've got to
Mhm.
make sure you have access controls, you have data in the right places, you don't have data sprawl with files all over the place, you have access control all nicely cleaned up. But fundamentally, what ShareGate does is focus on making sure the right people have access to the right data. And
Mhm.
historically, that was through controlling the files. But today, it's about controlling what answers the LLMs are giving. And that is fundamentally what we do. And it's very
Mhm.
easy to get lost in complexity when you think about all of everything I just said, when you go down the rabbit hole. But
Yeah.
fundamentally, you focus on what's the core value you do, what's the core problem you solve, and you stick from a go-to-market perspective to that messaging. There's lots behind it, but you stick to that core messaging of the core problem that you solve. And Microsoft is great at launching new products and adding complexity to the ecosystem. And so actually, it's
Yeah.
almost great because we can simplify the complex message that Microsoft is putting out to the world. And that's a value that we bring.
Wow, very interesting. I think keeping the user experience simple in a complex technical world is what keeps 20,000 companies coming back to your ecosystem, right? Now, let's get to the last segment of the conversation and discuss the next phase for your business. So, um, let's explore how Workleap is entering its next phase of growth. So, when you imagine the next phase, what do you envision for Workleap?
ShareGate is on the edge of innovation. We've been the leader in the data movement space in SharePoint migrations for the last 20 years. Actually, just
Yeah.
this week is the company's 20th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And we've built a great,
Congratulations.
thank you. We've built a great foundation on the business there. At the end of 2025, we launched Protect, which is the governance functionality we talked about before about managing the answers that LLMs are giving and the access that LLMs have. We
Hmm.
have a couple more products in us that we believe we can solve some of this other complexity that's starting to grow in the ecosystem. So there's new products. There could be new geographies as we expand into new markets, finish off new markets in North America. And then on Workleap HR, we are going to be launching into the agentic era, where we start
Hmm.
helping the HR department push their employees and their management layer into the agentic era. So lots on
Hmm.
the go, lots of innovation happening at Workleap, and we're
Yeah.
very excited to bring it to market.
Wow, so are we, and we can't wait for our audience to, discover the new insights as well. Uh, I'm loving this conversation, and definitely I'd love for you to be back, hopefully for an in-studio episode that we do the next. But for now, Peter, before we let you go, if there's one final piece of advice that you'd want to give to the SaaS founders who are, struggling to align their sales and marketing and, are in this confused state of mind, if you could whisper one thing into their ear, what would it be and why?
As a founder, you're always under pressure to grow and do more.
Yeah.
And that's obviously what you want to do. But, and you said it before, you don't want to scale something that isn't just right. And so I
Yeah.
always keep in the back of my brain this statement or this quote is until you nail it, don't scale it. And that can be global expansion, that could be new products, that could be a new marketing motion, doesn't matter. But until you have the proof points that this is working, do a test, but don't
Uh-huh.
spend more until you pass that test.
A golden advice and indeed a great reminder that alignment starts with a shared vision of the customer's success at the end of the day. So thank you so much for joining us, Peter. It was absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me, Kripa.
All right, that was Peter Dougherty from Workleap, a masterclass on how to build a unified revenue engine and leverage AI to make work simpler for companies around the globe. To all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning into the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and visit CanadianSME.ca for more resources. To learn more about how we are supporting the ecosystem, please visit the Canadian SME Small Business Foundation at smbfoundation.ca. And lastly, a very special thank you to our partners, UPS and ADP, our HR partner, for their ongoing commitment to empowering SMBs across Canada. I'll see you all in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.